Officially, I want to welcome you today, the day 2 breakout session, Self-Assurance and the Imposter Syndrome, Recognizing and Leaping Over the Hurdles. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Lisa Targonski. I'll be moderating the session, and I'd like to introduce our session speaker, who you probably see on the screen next to me, Dr. Lisa Pastore. Dr. Pastore has business experience in the financial sector as well as academic hospital experience as a women's health researcher. With a PhD in epidemiology from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, she's been a faculty member since 2003 and has presented her research at national and international conferences. She's currently pivoting her career closer to tech by pursuing certification as a senior data scientist. So with that, please welcome Lisa.
Thank you so much, Lisa. This is really easy. We've got Lisa and Lisa today. I'm very pleased to be talking to you today about self-assurance and imposter syndrome. So our objectives today are to discuss self-doubt in the workplace. We're going to be talking about how our language reflects this lack of self-assurance and talk about some of the research on this topic. We're going to be talking about the differences between imposter feelings and imposter syndrome, and we're definitely at several points going to be talking about solutions and what we can do about it. Now, I did have the pleasure of attending the conference yesterday, as well as what has happened today. And so I realized I should kind of stop and talk about who I am. So a little bit of my career journey, including my own pivots. I have an undergraduate bachelor's degree in math, and then I went to work for a Fortune 500 company in the financial services industry for about 10 years. And then I did a major pivot into public health. Like a lot of people, somewhere around age 30, started asking myself, what do I want to do? And wanted to make a change. So I got a master's and doctorate in epidemiology, and then proceeded to be a researcher and faculty member at academic medical teaching hospitals. For the last year, I've been seeking another pivot. And last month, I accepted a position with the Virginia Department of Health as an epidemiologist. And one day I hope to have a title of data scientist. So being the researcher that I am, let me tell you my citations for my talk today. The material mostly comes from two sources. The first is a book called The Confidence Code. And this is written by two women, Katie Kay and Claire Shipman. They are both broadcast news people. And I'll tell you a little bit about them in a minute. This was a 2018 New York Times bestseller. The second source is Dr. Hugh Kearns from Australia. He is a faculty member. He's done worldwide consulting. He's got a book and has a webinar and teachings on imposter syndrome. So as we pursue a goal, sometimes the journey towards completing that goal feels monumental because of the self-doubt that we're carrying on our shoulders. It feels like this cartoon going up the hill. Most of the time, imposter feelings, imposter syndrome shows up as that nagging feeling. They're going to find out the truth. You know, I really kind of don't quite deserve to be here. And this is especially common when we have a new job, or maybe it's an existing company, but we've been given a different assignment, that sort of thing. So for those of you who are at the keynote presentation yesterday, they started asking some questions or just saying, women tend to have these nagging thoughts of, am I too, fill in the blank? Am I not enough, fill in the blank? And these are these nagging feelings of self-doubts. So now let's go on to language, as I talked about. So even very successful women have used language that perhaps shows some self-doubt, or maybe it's socially acceptable. We'll talk about that in a minute. I have three particular times in my, my seminar today where I definitely want to get some conversation going. And I hope that some of you will jump on and we can talk about this. So let's start with Katie Kay, one of the authors of that book. She's from the United Kingdom. Since 2007, she's been an anchor of the BBC World News America. And she has this impression that because she has an English accent, that people automatically give her extra IQ points for having a British accent. The second author of that book is Claire Shipman. She has spent the last decade on ABC. She's currently with Good Morning America. In her 20s, she was a CNN correspondent from Moscow. And when people commented on her amazing success, she tended to say that she was just lucky. And then we've got Sheryl Sandberg from Facebook. And her quote is, "There are still days when I wake up feeling like a fraud, not sure I should be where I am." Very successful women. And yet they have this language of, "I was just a lucky girl." So this is where I would like to invite you to have some conversation now. Please, offer to share your screen and talk, or make some comments in the chat. Is this terminology of "I'm just a lucky girl," is this a female thing? Do we think this is a polite thing to say because we're female, but we're really not doubting ourselves? Or do we think that luck is how we got where we are? And I can't seem to share my screen and see your chat at the same time. So Lisa, does anybody have anything to say on this?
I'm just seeing some good. Kim shared the links so that people can go ahead and grab those. But let's tell people specifically, what do you think? Is this a female thing? Do we really not feel like we earn the position? Who wants to add in the chat? So Kim says she thinks we couch our accomplishments. You want to talk about that a little bit, Lisa?
Yeah, so that maybe we feel like we have to be modest, because after all, we want to be a good girl. And we're going to talk next, or I guess in a little bit, about bragging, arrogance, self-assurance. So Kim or other people, do you think we tend to use this language that I was lucky, or maybe I don't deserve this or something, because we're just wanting to be modest?
Now you got him started, Lisa. We've got from Julia, we are taught to be humble and not brag, more often women than men, although not always.
I agree.
Rachel's chiming in with, in her opinion, it's more of confidence, secure, insecure versus male, female, as she's seen it in some male coworkers. And Laura said she thinks it's a female thing, or sometimes a person new to the field thing, under any gender moving to STEM without a STEM background.
Good. Thank you so much for your comments. I really want this to be as participatory as we can, even though we're not sitting all in the same place.
One more before you move on to the next slide, Lisa.
Oh,
Fong is suggesting females tend to focus more on their shortcomings.
And that might very well be.
I do see that.
Yeah. So now, being the researcher that I am, I'm going to share some research with you. This is from, excuse me, this was a study of Hewlett Packard, and this is in the book, The Confidence Code. So they did this really interesting study there of women who were working at Hewlett Packard. And they discovered that women only applied for promotion within the company. So they're looking within their own company and human resources, and that women only applied for a promotion if they met 100% of the qualifications. But the male employees applied for promotion or somewhat better position within the company when they met 60% of the qualifications. So the authors have this quote, but they said, women feel confident only when they are perfect or practically perfect. And I've experienced that myself, because for this past year, I realized I needed to do something different, and I've applied for a lot of jobs. And I kept thinking about this statistic because I have spoken about this topic before. And I forced myself to apply for jobs when I only met 60 to 70% of the qualifications, and I applied anyways. Was I interviewed? No, but there you go. So where is the line between self-assurance and arrogance? Someone can be perceived as arrogant or aggressive when they're highly confident. And isn't this even more so in women? I think in women, we have kind of a different line, so to speak, as to where that line is between self-assurance and arrogance. So regardless of your political views, you probably noticed that Kamala Harris's speaking style on the Senate floor is different than during her vice presidential debate. So here's the next area of discussion. So why do you think Kamala Harris changed her speaking style for the debate?
So Lisa, while people are kind of thinking about that question, I just want to point out one other person said that she wonders if we judge others, as harshly as we judge ourselves. And maybe we should take a look at that. So it's a great feed into this question is what's Kamala thinking about her environment?
Yeah, and I don't have any research on whether people judge others as harshly as they judge themselves, but my sense, and this is as a mom of a college student, I think definitely younger women, maybe older women, but definitely younger women. There is so much judgment in social media. I just think it's ugly, but I'm also a protective mom.
So does anyone want to put responses in the chat? Or again, you can always press that blue button in the upper right-hand corner to share screen and audio. It just means we'll look at your face, not what you're looking at on the computer.
Yep.
But,
and then the related things, if you don't have a particular comment about the vice presidential debate and stuff and women, I also wondered, and I don't actually know this, there wasn't anything in the book about where this line is between being self-assured and arrogant. Is it different for a younger person or someone newer to the industry versus someone who has more experience? Is it different for underrepresented groups in tech? And I don't know. This book, The Confidence Code, was not industry specific. Any thoughts on that before I move on?
I'm not seeing anything, but I think it's a great question. You talked about your daughter. Do you see a generational difference in confidence there?
I actually do not see a generational difference in self-confidence. In some ways, I would probably also hypothesize, without having done research on this myself, I would hypothesize that the younger women actually have more self-confidence than the older generation, because there are so many more examples of women can do anything now than in prior years. So that you have a lot more knowledge now about the importance for self-assurance and success. But I do think the judgment of other people is much worse in the younger people because of social media. Many of us, Facebook and everything else that's only been around for so long. So
yeah, it's a different kind of vulnerability and exposure, I think, when it's so public like that.
Yeah.
And the person who just posted, I'm pronouncing your name Fong. I apologize if I'm saying that wrong. You're welcome to correct me. But Lisa, she just mentioned for people with little experience, they may be perceived more arrogant if they are too firm in their opinions. And I think that's something that I know I've struggled with, because I might be feeling kind of meek. So in order to bolster myself, I come across firm, and I do worry. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I know I've actually kind of experienced that a little bit myself. I have a new job, just been there a month. And so what I have found, I go to give a comment in a meeting, And then usually the answer is, oh, we've already thought about, no, we're not going to do that. And I have found as a result, I'm starting to zip it more. I don't know that I'm being perceived as arrogant, but I decided to tone it down a little.
But I think the important difference to point out is that you're not letting someone else silence you, and it's not out of a fear. It sounds like you're making a purposeful decision to, in that moment with that audience, communicate a certain way, which is very different than just being afraid to present as you are.
Excellent. Right. You are totally right, Lisa.
Okay, I'll let you move on.
Yes.
This is great.
Yep. So again, going to research now. So where does all this start? This, lack of self-assurance in women. Is it nature or is it nurture? So let's start with nature and the role of biology on behavior. So in general, estrogen encourages social bonding and connection, discourages conflict and risk-taking. So again, the keynote on Wednesday, they talked about women in general, again, global comment, tend to be better at building community. So that's that social bonding and connection. On the other hand, testosterone, much higher in men, it encourages power and a focus on winning. And too much testosterone can cause aggression. So now let's look at nurture. And in this case, we're not looking at nurture from the home, we're looking at the role of education. So we're sure we were all raised in an environment, especially in school, sitting there quietly. Oh, we were praised for good behavior. Look at Susie, she's sitting quietly, or reading the book quietly like she's supposed to, or she has her pencils lined up like she's supposed to. Whereas, look to the playground. The boys toughened by rough play and teasing. So Title IX and sports, Title IX helped sports and women to be more included in that. And the research shows that girls in general drop sports during adolescence. As you probably know, they also tend to drop doing more math and science by middle school. Research has shown that participation in high school sports is associated with a greater likelihood of going to college, having a higher salary, and being in a male-dominated profession. So through this book, what they said is they had found that there was almost like a new way to look at confidence. And so looking at the first bullet, confidence is the stuff that turns thoughts into action. And flipping the way we look at self-assurance points to what the remedies could be. So now to the last bullet, when someone has low confidence, it tends to lead in inaction. And the research shows, and I think this is about the Hewlett Packard studies again, when we do act, even if forced to, women perform just as well as men. So here's the first slide. I've got a couple of them on a path forward to stop thinking so much and just act. And you've heard some of these things woven into some of the other presentations. Don't wait to be 100% qualified before trying for that promotion. I'm trying to think. Yes, the keynote on Wednesday, one of the slides said, we need to show up and be daring. So these are all, taken from different angles because we've given presentations on different topics, but there are overlaps in these messages. We need to show up and be daring. So now I'm going to switch for a minute, and I'm going to talk about the teachings from this man from Australia, because he had a different take on it that I personally thought was very helpful. It's separating imposter feelings from imposter syndrome. So with imposter feelings, you occasionally feel like a fraud, even though there might be evidence to say that you're not. You have these qualifications, but you sometimes feel like a fraud. And these feelings are common when you're being evaluated, promotion. There was someone in one of the kind of the lunchtime roundtable just before this one. And she said that she feels insecurity about whether she's earned this position as a woman in an underrepresented group in tech. And so these are common when you might be the first of fill in the blank or the few of fill in the blank in your workplace. It's also common during times of transition. You've relocated to a new location. You know, you're in a new city. You don't really know like who's interacting where. You're in a new industry. You might not know the rules of the game. Those feelings are common, and actually 70% of people feel these feelings in certain situations. On the other hand, imposter syndrome is a much more continual feelings of, I can't do this. I'll be found out. I just got away with it this time. And what happens in imposter syndrome, and about 30% of women feel this, is you take what was that success and your mind kind of reframes it in a negative way and takes that positive experience and diminishes it because you say it was a fluke, you didn't deserve it, something, and you take that positive experience and you end up putting in your negative column. And when you experience that, what happens is you tend to work that much harder. You know, you feel like you have to just like do more because you know that was a fluke. You might avoid certain things. And this is a constant pervasive feeling, and it's a negative loop for yourself. So he calls something called mis-attribution, where you've taken that success and you've diminished it. Like, well, you know, I had that success then, but this is different now. Or I only had that success because I worked so hard. And I just want to say a funny thing about this graphic. I've seen this graphic and this photo several times, and it was quite a while before I realized that we're supposed to be looking at the cat who's the second from the right, and not the lemur that's standing up on the left. So I just laughed at myself that this Photoshop clearly was so well done that I didn't even recognize the cat. So how does Hugh Curran say to address this? Well, first is to realize that it's normal. What happens, and a couple of people have talked about this, that sometimes we hide certain things. We hide certain experiences, we hide certain feelings. And so by not talking about our insecurities, because after all, we don't want to be found out, we don't realize that a lot of these feelings are normal and they're common. Secondly, he said to look at the evidence versus the feelings. And again, you know, you're all here. You're thinking about this. If you can try and separate how you're feeling from, you know, like if you were a third party and looking at what actually happened, then that would be the evidence. You know, try and separate that. And you know, the last one, jump in and act and be brave, which is, you know, goes along with the what the book said and what they talked about in the keynote speech. He had a great quote from Sidney Smith from 1849. A great deal of talent is lost to the world for want of a little courage. So I wanted to pause for just a second. I suspect most people are viewing this seminar today thinking about this for yourself. But I also challenge you to think about how this, the content of this seminar might also help you to maybe be a better mentor. You can be more attuned to the language of your mentees. If you're a supervisor, this might help you be more attuned to the language of the people that work for you, male or female. In your peers, when you're having those coffee chats, women do tend to use language that diminishes our successes. And there are lots of ways that you might be able to use this information to help those around you. So I'm going to pause, and actually I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I would like to take questions, comments, have other. Let's see if I can get back. There's my mouse, and so that we can have some conversation. If you would like some more. I have a couple more slides if you want some other tips from somebody else, but I just wanted to be open to any conversation, any comments.
Can you see us again, Lisa?
I can.
Excellent. That's got to feel good. It's so hard doing presentations. I don't know who's done one, but you're talking into this void. And for someone like Lisa, who, you're kind of a people person, it's hard to not have that eye contact. So thank you for being brave and doing that without seeing people. We've had a couple more comments come in, a lot of appreciation for the content. Seems like it's really resonating with folks. Kim especially likes sharing the difference between imposter feelings and syndrome. And Laura,
and Kim, I found that really helpful myself, just being able to separate that, because I've only ever heard of imposter syndrome. So that was an entirely new way to look at it for me. And again, it helped me to see who was Kim, to see what's normal or not, and how common it was, and to kind of get some perspective there.
Yeah. I've been feeling those feelings myself in my transition from, being an educator to now being a student again. And I knew, I obviously know about imposter syndrome. I'm like, I'm not feeling that, but just knowing that, these feelings are still normal, especially when you're starting something new, and you just got to kind of push forward no matter what.
Right. And I guess I always think those feelings of fear, sometimes it's telling you something. Sometimes that's, Nicole Case talked about, being connected to your core values. And sometimes those feelings of fear are telling you, no, maybe you don't want to work for that company. But other times the fear comes from, I don't know if I can do this. And one of the things that I thought was fascinating about Nicole Case's keynote today was that from her facts that she knew about her own qualifications, that when she was given this other opportunity, that she kind of felt like she wasn't qualified for it, but she did it anyways. So, and that's different than imposter feelings, because there, the facts would tell her, oh, she had a lot of ground to make up, but she was willing to take the challenge. And I just thought it was really neat and very brave of her. I mean, that's a different level of brave to say, I don't know this, but I'm going to learn it and I'm going to take advantage of the opportunity, versus I can do this, but I'm nervous about it, or it's just like taking my skills and using it in a different realm. And that's sort of brave to get over the imposter feeling hump.
Yeah, I found for myself that if I'm passionate, like if the passion's there, but it's something new, or, I don't have the experience, or I have this feeling of discomfort, like to me, I now take that as a sign as I need to do that. Like I need to get uncomfortable. So that's how I've tried to switch it around. It's like, oh, okay, this is making me uncomfortable, but I really am passionate about this. I better do it.
And that's a great way to think about it. Like it matters to you.
Mm-hmm.
And so it matters to you, and you can identify that you're passionate about it.
Well, I'm up here, so other people, I want to encourage you. Come on.
we do have some questions for people that aren't asking to be let in yet, but you can change your mind along the way. And this actually, Kim, if you want to stay on, you both probably can speak to this this next one. As an educator and mentor for students, what can we do to help female students who have imposter feelings or syndrome? So Lisa, you talked about this earlier. How can we help others?
Well, I think it's important to have the conversation with your mentees about what is perfectly normal. So, whether I have been mentoring a man or a woman, I usually stop and say, well, you might be really nervous about giving this presentation, but you're going to feel fabulous when you're done because you will have done it. And this is why it might be important, or this is what's normal. To say, yes, it's not uncommon to have those butterflies before you have a conversation. And that's what's going to make you even that much more alert and attentive when you stand at the podium and those sorts of things. But I think also as a mentor, as a supervisor, when you can show your own humanness to the other person, then it helps them to embrace their own humanness. I'm not a professional speaker. They're not going to become a professional speaker or whatever, but whatever it is, that is the challenge. I guess I mentioned speaking because oftentimes my mentees might be nervous about giving a presentation someplace. But whatever is the new skill, helping them to, through my own experiences of trying something, learning something new, I can be an example and a support to them. Kim, do you have something else you want to say on that, or are there some other questions that are grabbing your attention?
Yeah, I would just say, sometimes you have to remind folks of what they have accomplished. Kind of put that back in the front of them. And then also, especially in STEM fields and computer science fields, normalizing that failure is normal, and that's actually part of the way you learn. And so you're going to experience failure. And so that shouldn't trigger imposter syndrome, because it's just normal.
I was trying to figure out how to give you a high five, Kim. I completely agree. In fact, as we're having this conversation, it's reminding me of, I used to teach yoga back in another realm. And I got done with a class one day that I was taking from someone else, and she was mortified that she had made a mistake. She had said left instead of right. And I had the opportunity to tell her how much I appreciated it, because it reminded me as a teacher that she was human and she made a mistake, and people didn't fall over, turn into a pretzel. It was totally fine. And I think we do forget to let each other know that mistakes are normal. Falling flat on our face is not desired, but normal. And the ability to get up from that and do the next talk or, make the next presentation is what can help us grow. We've got some good connections between folks on the chat peripherally, so they're going to go ahead and connect.
That's great.
One of the questions I have about imposter syndrome is around people that are more of a consultative role, where maybe they're representing a company. So their personal expertise isn't all-encompassing, but their company's is. So I had a young woman ask me one time, she said, we're saying we can do A, B, and C, but I only know how to do A. How can I confidently work with a client or work with folks and say, yes, we can do this for you? So it's not really her knowledge it's not the existing knowledge that she feels is insufficient, but she feels like she can't tap into it, if that makes sense. Have you dealt with that, and do you have good tips?
I think if she had, I don't know that has, specifically relates to imposter feelings and imposter syndrome. So, but in general,
she can't claim that knowledge.
Yeah. So that you're right. You were representing a larger organization, and I don't know within her organization, sometimes simply having resources behind you to call in for, so-and-so is in charge of that, and so-and-so is in charge of that. Or if she is supposed to be the point person, maybe she needs to, what someone could do in that situation is start to develop some sort of, well, I guess it probably a cheat sheet for yourself, knowing who to contact, the most common, maybe either sites on the company website where you're going to get some information, or the people to contact. Someone in that situation might need to be more proactive within the company and to reach out and say, I am working in this domain, but I'm getting questions in these other domains. Can you identify someone in your group who can help me fill in what the capabilities are in your domain, so that when I get these calls, I can start to field it and start to more specifically say, these are the things we could do. These are the languages that we know. These are the services that we can provide.
Yeah, so it sounds like part of that is just understanding what's expected of you and what's available to you, and then having done a little bit of research ahead of time, so that even if you don't know exactly what you're being asked, you're not at all an imposter in your ability to gather the information and the resources that others need.
Right. And and I don't know if it's because I am a researcher, my orientation is to try to use information and data to as my platform, so to speak. So that, like, if I'm going into an interview, I want to do my research ahead of time. I want to look at their website. I want to see the social media of the person that I'm going to talk with, learn a little bit about who they are, and I draw my confidence in those situations from the research that I've done ahead of time. And for someone else, maybe doing that research would be kind of overwhelming, and you're like, listen, this is who I am. These are my skills. If you like it, fine. I'm not going to change me to fit into where you are and what you need. And I do a little more of thinking ahead of time what they need, what I think their gaps are, trying to reread the job description and then say, how might I be able to fill those roles, and what might their priorities be now? So I happen to do research to try and give myself self-confidence, before those situations.
Yeah. That's kind of where my mind's been going during some of this is I think these imposter feelings and syndrome, it's very common. And even if we know it exists in us, intellectually, we know we've got what it takes. It sometimes can be hard to fill that confidence gap when we're going into those challenging situations. I know you have one trick because you mentioned it in this morning's keynote, but what do you do when you're going into a situation where you're feeling like an imposter? What do you do to make you feel like you can conquer anything?
Well, that actually makes me think of my next couple of slides. Maybe I should show my next.
That sounds great. We're at 1:41. We've got 4 minutes plus, and we can go a little bit long. I'd love to see the next couple of slides.
All right. How do I do this? There we go.
We're back up. Yep.
Okay. I need to go down. Hello. Oops. There we go. There.
Presentation mode, and you're good to go.
So I think everyone has to find for yourself what works for you. But for me, I try and do research. And the other thing that I try to do is sometimes I try to pretend I'm a third person. I'm a third person looking at the situation and saying, how would somebody else either respond, react, or whatever? And that helps to separate my own feelings on the situation. But I also found this other group in a presentation. This organization is called Mentium. They literally In the business world, they pair a senior mentor and a mentee, but only in the business world. So she talks about creating a recovery toolkit. And the recovery toolkit is to connect you back to your core self and your self-confidence. And you will probably recognize on this list, many of these things are actually COVID-19 strategies that you might have been reading about in the newspaper or a magazine or hearing people talk about. So she divided this doubt recovery toolkit into 4 domains: movement, quiet practice, people, and creativity. So her movement is, going out for a walk, working out, those sorts of things. Quiet practice might be meditation, writing in a journal. For me, Lisa, you and I have known each other for a little bit, but I didn't know that you have taught yoga in the past, and I like to practice yoga. And that's actually a picture of me a couple of years ago, trying my one only time doing yoga on a stand-up paddleboard. I think of yoga as a twofer, is both movement and meditative for me. People can be part of your recovery toolkit. Talking to the people that love you will help you connect to who you are, regardless of what decision you make or what actions you do not do or do not take in the workplace. It just can help ground you. And last but not least, creativity. Painting, drawing, photography, that sort of thing can help you draw on other parts of your brain to let the part of you, your heart or your head that's kind of spinning out of control with imposter feelings, give it a break and give yourself a little perspective. So with that, I will close. I thank you all very much for attending today. Let me stop my screen share. I thank you all. Thank you for your comments. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.
This has just been great, Lisa, and thanks everyone for joining in and chiming in. I suspect we have all been in this position, so I appreciated learning kind of what that is, knowing that we're not alone in that, and then getting some tips to feel whole and know that we'll get there.